Arkansas at Oklahoma State. This game is going to be played at noon, September 7th on Saturday at Boone's Pickens Stadium in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Oklahoma State opened as a 8.5, jumped up to 9.5, now back down to an 8.5 point favorite in this one. The over/under is set at a crispy 59.5. Pretty high total there. It's no secret that both of these teams are looking to play a little bit better defense in 2024. But let's kind of start on the Arkansas side of things. 4-8 last year, but lost 5 games by a total of 24 points. Sam Pittman is on the hot seat headed into year 5. Everybody's talked about it. So he brings in Bobby Petrino after a failed experiment with Dan Enos. KJ Jefferson's gone. Rocket Sanders is gone. And those transfer outs make way for Taylon Green and Jaquindon Jackson coming over from Utah, the quarterback and running back, respectively. There, O-line to have an O-line coach as your head coach last year, Arkansas really had a tough time on the offensive line. Went out and addressed that with a couple of tackles in the transfer portal. They feel a whole lot better about what they have this year versus what they had last year. You got a good wide receiver room and something that I think is going to be able to complement Bobby Petrino's system. 139 yards per game rushing last year. That was 10th best in the SEC. So you lose Rocket Sanders to the transfer portal, but what did you really lose, right? And that's kind of how things are looking on offense. D-line is talented, but not very deep. This defense will be led by Landon Jackson, 6'7", 280-pound defensive end, and he is super talented, and I really like that guy. But the linebacker core is kind of scary, and the jury's still out in pretty much the whole defense for Arkansas this year. And then you go over to Oklahoma State, and you return a ton on offense. You return an absolute ton on offense. It was an absolute roller coaster ride for Oklahoma State fans or just college football fans in general that paid attention to Oklahoma State last year. Oklahoma State had Josh Pate coming on making videos telling everybody he's sorry for picking them last year to win, to make it to the Big 12 championship game. Well, and that was after a 35-0 or whatever it was blowout from South Alabama. Then this team goes on to go 8-2 over their final 10 games, finding their way to the Big 12 championship game where they lost against Texas, and then got a bowl win against Texas A&M to put a cherry on what was a really good 10-4 season for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. They were a top 30 offense in 2023, and they returned 90% production, and defense was really the bugaboo for this team last year, Mason. You love what they got on offense. Alan Bowman, you got the best, running back in Ollie Gordon in the country. I don't think anybody's really arguing with that at this point. 1,700-plus yard season last year, and experienced, one of the most experienced offensive lines to have ever been assembled or get on the field together for Oklahoma State. Excuse me. They're going to be really good. I love the wide receivers that you return as well. Rashad Owens had a nice day this past Saturday. Brennan Presley looking good. So it's all about the defense, man. This team's fate is in the defense's hands in 2024. It was really bad, ranked 122 in the country last season. So that kind of dresses up this situation here. We've got what I think is a really improved offense at Arkansas. I really do feel that way. I think it's going to be a whole lot better this season. But the jury is still out on both of these defenses. Oklahoma State has a good offense in their own right. I like what they've got going on there. What's your some keys to victory? We could start with Oklahoma State, Arkansas, whatever you want to do. But what are some keys to victory for each of these teams, and how are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, I mean, for Oklahoma State, had a really good week last week, I think, against San Diego State. San Diego State had I think it was a 29 win streak snapped. It was the longest in the country at the time. So a pretty good little opponent there for a non-con game, and Oklahoma State pretty much took care of business on offense. I think Alan Bowman looked good, 25 of 34, 267 yards, 3 touchdowns. Ollie Gordon had a 100-yard game, two touchdowns, another one in the air, 42 yards in the air with a touchdown. Rashad Owens played pretty well, three receptions, 81 yards, and a touchdown. So to me, the offense played well. I think giving up to 20 to San Diego State's probably not terrible. You would like for your defense to do a little bit better, but I saw a lot of the same out of Oklahoma State's defense. Trey Rucker, the safety, led the team with 15 total tackles, which is a ton. This is a guy who had 100 tackles last year, right? Not a good sign that your safety is getting the bulk of the tackles. In a sense, I mean, it's good because you got a good safety who can come up and play the run really well, but you don't want these running backs or even receivers to be getting to that third level of the defense. So don't really like that. Nick Martin had a great game, 10 tackles for him as a middle linebacker. He's probably the centerpiece of this defense here. But to me, you got to play a little bit better on defense if you're going to win this game for Oklahoma State, that is, because I really like what I see out of Arkansas's offense. Bobby Petrino comes back to Arkansas, takes over as the offensive coordinator. Things look like they're clicking pretty good for Arkansas and the Razorbacks on offense. I really like this Taylor Green kid at quarterback. He had 229 yards and two touchdowns on the ground, didn't even play the whole game. 229 yards, two touchdowns through the air, and did not even play the whole game. Another 88 yards and two touchdowns on the ground. This guy really has Heisman-like stuff. When you watch his game, and I'm not saying he's going to win the Heisman ever. I'm really not saying that. But when you watch him play, he's got talent. I mean, looking at the highlights and all, it seemed like he was really in command of this offense, picked up things really quickly, and maybe Bobby Petrino in this offense that he's installed here for Arkansas has put together something that's really simplified and something that these guys can come in year one, pick up right away and play really well. Because even the backups, Malachi Singleton came in, was 8 of 10 for 120 yards, right? Third string quarterback comes in, KJ Jackson, 4 of 4 for 59 yards. So I think that the players are responding really well on offense for Arkansas to Bobby Petrino and to this offensive scheme. I think that could be an issue and something that Oklahoma State's going to have to watch out for, particularly in the passing game. I mean, they kind of did a little bit of everything. I mean, rushing, Jaquindon Jackson had eight carries for 101 yards and two touchdowns. Combine that with Taylor Green's two touchdowns and almost 100 yards on the ground. It's going to be really tough to stop this team. Now, one thing that I think Arkansas, and we don't know because Arkansas Pine Bluff playing against Arkansas, like we don't know what to expect out of this offensive line. But I do still have questions about the offensive line for Arkansas. I don't think that they were tested against Pine Bluff. That could be an area that you exploit with a veteran defense. Maybe you bring some blitz packages that these offensive linemen, would have a tough time picking up. But on the defensive side of the football, I think for Oklahoma State, you gotta find the mistakes, you gotta find the havoc plays, and capitalize on them where you can, because this is a talented group. They're going to get their points. You got to limit it, or they're going to get their yards. You need to limit the points, and limit the red zone touchdowns. Make them kick a field goal. Bend, don't break. That's kind of the recipe for success, I think, for this Oklahoma State defense. They're going to be on their heels a pretty good bit of this game, and I'm excited to see the matchup, because I think ultimately this is going to be a little bit of a shootout. Over under set at almost 60 points kind of indicates that. But who in this game is going to make a mistake first? I think that's going to kind of tell the story in this one. And Oklahoma State, with a veteran group, I think that they could be the ones who are the beneficiary of some mistakes and could catch Arkansas slipping a little bit.
Yeah, well, you talk about mistakes, and that is something that is a key to victory for either one of these teams. For me, who can get a turnover or two? Arkansas was one of the worst teams in the country last year at putting the football on the ground, and lo and behold, they did it twice last week against Arkansas Pine Bluff. So I'm wondering, and one of them was Jaquindon Jackson. I mean, that ball went absolutely flying. and the other one I believe was the backup quarterback. So, but my point remains: this team fumbled the ball like 20 something times last year. That was ranked 122nd in the nation. And on the other hand of that, you've got Oklahoma State, who, I really love Alan Bowman. After a 3,500-yard passing season, I mean, he just needs to look to clean up some mistakes, right? 15 touchdowns and 14 interceptions in 2023. You got to clean that up because whenever you sit there and think about you played 14 games and you threw 14 interceptions, that's way too many, guys. I mean, at one per game, that's giving a possession away. That's going to cost your team. It's just a matter of time. And in this game, I think it will cost them, especially a game that you're talking about, basically a touchdown spread. So, what team can get some turnovers? I think that's a really, really big deal. I believe this game is going to be high scoring, right? I really do. We just talked about the defenses. I don't think they're great. I just don't think they're great. I think they're a work in progress, but I don't think that they're ever going to be a top. Either one of them is going to be any kind of like a top 25 defense or anything like that this season. So you've got to figure out a way to get a turnover. That's it. Really boils down to that, I think, and whichever team can win that turnover battle in this one, I think is probably going to end up winning this game. For Oklahoma State, defensively, can you isolate Taylor Green? And what I mean by that is, can we isolate what he's doing? This guy looked really good in the zone read game. Him and Jaquindon Jackson are going to be trouble in the zone read game. I'm here to tell you right now. Taylor Green can read the ever-living hell out of the defense, and he's going to check on that end, and if he needs to pull it and run, he does not mind doing so. He looks kind of like a baby giraffe a little bit when he runs. This guy's long and lanky, but, boy, he eats up ground quick. So if he doesn't feel like he's got it, he'll hand it to Jaquindon Jackson, and I've got a lot of trust in him as well. I liked him at Utah last year, kind of stuck in a really bad situation at Utah last year, so I feel like a lot of people didn't realize what he was doing for that team, but and dealt with some injuries too. It was a pretty gritty season for him there for the Utes last year, so I expect him to have a really big year. The tackles, Mason. I mean, it was really bad last year. The tackles for Arkansas were so bad last year. And as I said, you go into the portal, you get Fernando Carmona. He comes from San Jose State. And then Keyshawn Blackstock comes over from Michigan State. And the coaching staff feels really good about these guys. This offensive line could not bounce the ball outside last year. I mean, you just couldn't. You couldn't get an edge on a defense. And it's Arkansas Pine Bluff. Totally get it, but they were able to do it. They looked good. You put Arkansas Pine Bluff in front of them last weekend. They did what they were supposed to do to them. They were able to pretty much do whatever they needed to do on offense, especially kind of second quarter on in that game. So I feel like this is a really improved Arkansas offense, and if Oklahoma State is going to win this game, they've got to make Taylor Green decide what he's going to do. And what I think you've got to do is get him in a situation where he's got to pass to win the game. You have to. You have to stop the run if you're Oklahoma State. Make Taylor Green beat you with his arm. This guy has got, among active quarterbacks, I think he's top in the nation in touchdowns, rushing touchdowns as a quarterback. I think like 29. And he's up there with some of the best that's done it over the last decade as far as those numbers go. So you gotta limit that. He can kill you with his legs. He will do it. And I don't love Oklahoma State to be able to get that done. But that goes for Arkansas too. I don't see Arkansas putting on some kind of defensive clinic either. And my last thing that I kind of noticed doing these breakdowns is, believe it or not, Oklahoma State has gone where they've wanted to go over the last 12 months. They've been to a Big 12 championship game. Yeah, they kind of got mollywopped, but they were there, and it was a lot of people had counted them out. But would you believe that Arkansas has got a more talented roster? If you want to look at 24/7, and you want to look at the recruiting classes over the last few years, Arkansas is recruiting around 25th in the country. They've got better talent than this Oklahoma State roster, guys. At least as far as every talent metric that we usually look at, like 24/7. Oklahoma State recruits around 40th to 50th in the country every season. So, and that's looking back at the last like 4 recruiting classes. Arkansas has a discernible edge as far as recruiting guys out of high school and their talent. Um, and I feel like Arkansas has done a better job going to the transfer portal. There's only a couple of Oklahoma State transfers really even worth mentioning, right? I mean, the ones they got were good, but there wasn't many. So I would have liked to see Oklahoma State go in the transfer portal and pick up some more defensive additions, but um, it is what it is. They do pick up Kobe Hilton. He comes over from UTEP. He'll help out there in the secondary along with Corey Black. Those guys are going to really, really be tested. Mason, I would be remiss if I didn't mention these wide receivers for Oklahoma State as well because I feel like they're game changers. So I'll mention them real quick, and I'll kick it over to you, and you can kind of close this out, and then we'll get our predictions. But Oklahoma State's dangerous on the outside. I mean, they return. I talked about it a little bit. Brendan Presley, he had 991 yards last year receiving, and then Rashad Owens, who looks to be in midseason form, by the way, 895 yards last year. And then you bring back Dazon Stripling, who Stribling, excuse me, not Stripling. He had 198 yards, but it was because he was injured last year. So you've got three bona fide starters, and then you go in the transfer portal and you do get a guy like Tyler Foster. He comes over from Ohio State, and he looks to play tight end one. So this Oklahoma State offense is loaded. I feel like the Arkansas offense is much improved. How improved is it? That's what we're going to find out this coming up week. What do you think? What you got as far as this matchup? And give us your prediction. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting point talking about, how Arkansas has a better roster when you look at the recruiting talent, right? This is a team that recruits in the bottom of the SEC, but that's still among the top in college football when you look at the rankings as a whole. So to me, this is a game that when you compare that to Oklahoma State and the experience that they have, right? That's their advantage is the experience. One of the most experienced teams ever to play college football, like to come back in the season. A lot of COVID seasons, coming back, and a lot of redshirt, seniors and graduate transfers and redshirt juniors. A lot of experience on the Oklahoma State's on their team as a whole, not just the offense or the defense. And so to me, this game is about, is experience more important or is talent more important, right? We're going to see a philosophy sort of battle here, and see how this kind of plays out, because I think that Arkansas is very young in a sense of, the new offense and new players coming in, transfers coming in. They're young in a sense of playing together in this system, whereas Oklahoma State kind of has a lot of the same guys, same system, Mike Gundy's system. This is what they're used to. So how do we value those two differences? It's going to be really interesting to me. I'm always a little bit leaning towards talent, right? To me, if Arkansas came out against Arkansas Pine Bluff and sputtered a little bit on offense, right? Couldn't find their footing on the first couple of drives, and looked like they were trying to figure things out still on offense. I would be I would lean a lot heavier towards Oklahoma State, but they didn't do that. They came out in the first quarter and scored 28 points. I mean, 21 points in the second quarter as well. They look pretty automatic on offense. That gives me a lot of faith in this team and what they're going to be able to do against Oklahoma State on the road, right? It's going to be a tough environment, but I like Arkansas to keep it close, if not win this game outright. Oklahoma State has been known to lay an egg early in the season. This might be the game that they end up laying an egg and maybe overlooking Arkansas just a little bit as a team in the SEC that kind of gets beat up in its own conference. But we saw, not to compare ACC to Big 12, but we saw Vanderbilt beat a Virginia Tech team that's looking to make the ACC championship, and Vanderbilt is the worst team in the SEC. So let's kind of draw a little bit of a conclusion there to say this is going to be a tough game. And I think that 8.5 points is just way too dang many points for an Arkansas team that looks to be on the rise. I really like Arkansas in the points. I might like Arkansas on the money line. We'll have to wait and see kind of what this, well, I need more time to look into these games, first of all, to see exactly where I'm going to put my money. But I'm also anxious to see if this line moves at all, give me Arkansas and these points here, and to cover the points, I guess, and maybe on the money line. Also like the over to hit. I think these are two really good offenses. We're going to see it on full display. One of these teams is going to be playing from behind, and I think it could be a boat race to the end.
I'm with you 100%, Mason. Yeah, I don't think you can play Oklahoma State minus 9.5, or excuse me, minus 8.5, and be comfortable. I think the play here has got to be Arkansas plus 8.5. And by the way, folks, this isn't our betting show, which is on Thursday, by the way. But with that being said, let me ask you, I mean, and I'll ask you viewers, it's kind of a open-ended question here for all of you to answer in the comment section, but I think the general consensus amongst the public is that Arkansas sucks and Oklahoma State played in the Big 12 championship last year. That's what I think the general consensus is. Now, people here on the First and Long College Football Show, you probably don't look at it like that. Like I don't. I don't. This is a totally new Arkansas team, in my opinion. I know they return a lot of pieces and some good, some not so good, but I think Bobby Petrino being in full control. We saw him at Texas A&M most recently before Arkansas. He didn't have full control of that offense. He will here. He has all spring and fall. I fully expect Arkansas to show up ready to play and play with their hair on fire, because if Arkansas loses this game, Mason, the seat just gets that much hotter. And it's going to start up talks about, Sam Pittman and whether this team needs to go away from him. But if you win this game, you've got some serious momentum, and you might be headed for a bowl game, and I think you're going to have a pretty good shot at being able to get to a bowl game. So this game is really, really pivotal for Arkansas. It was a game that was super interesting to me. I spent way too much time on this game already, so I've already got all the notes. I'll send them over to you. You can have them because I did way too much. But for whatever reason, this game just really, really intrigues me. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but I tried to look this up. The last time these two teams played was 1980. Is that right? And this was a game that was played a lot. Arkansas owns the series, but, I mean, not really worth mentioning if you're talking about 60s, 70s, and 80s. I don't really give a damn about that. So, interesting note. These teams geographically are located really close to one another, right? You would feel like this was almost like a rivalry game, right? But and I think maybe in the back in the day it used to be. You guys let me know in the comment section. I know you Arkansas fans are going to know all the history and all this stuff. I'd love to hear it because I'm sure there's a couple of old Arkansas or Oklahoma State fans still kicking around, and they can tell us about the good old days whenever that rivalry was still burning a flame there. Oklahoma State plus 8.5, over 59.5. We'll keep an eye on the lines this week and kind of go from there.